What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the ShowMeFootball.com podcast. And today I am joined by Connor as always, but a lot has gone on in the Mizzou football world despite the season being over and no bowl games. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in and start with the latest addition to the football team. Ohio State wide receiver transfer Mookie Cooper. So if you guys don't know, Mookie Cooper was he was from Trinity Catholic High School in St. Louis, he was a top 100 recruit in the 2020 class. He originally committed to the University of Texas, backed off that pledge, then ended up signing with Ohio State whenever it was all said and done. And after this season where he didn't record a single stat for the Ohio State Buckeyes, I think he kind of saw the writing on the wall or just wanted to be closer to home. So he decided to go ahead and put his name in the transfer portal, which is probably a good idea because they also signed several star wide receivers in their 2021 class, including number one prospect at the position, Emeka Egbuka. I think that's how you say it. But yeah, he's supposed to be really good. So I think Cooper could have just saw the writing on the wall there and was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to make it here. And then he, like I said, he could have just wanted to be closer to home, and that's why he ended up at Mizzou. But Josh Helmholt from Rivals.com, he says that Mookie Cooper is one of the most explosive players that he's seen in the last decade. And he is if you don't know who he is, he's kind of the Midwest area recruiting analyst. So he knows a lot about Mookie Cooper, and he said he's one of the most explosive players that he's covered within the past decade. So that's something I get. Some people are concerned that Cooper couldn't crack the wide receiver rotation at Ohio State, and they're thinking, well, maybe that guy isn't that good. But I think that's just a testament more to how absolutely stacked Ohio State is. It doesn't mean, come on, you guys would be lying to yourselves if you didn't say you wanted to pick a handful of players from Ohio State's roster and put them on Mizzou. Just because they're not first string at Ohio State doesn't mean they're not good. But that's a lot there. Before I get a little more into it, Connor, I'm just going to ask you, what are your initial impressions on the Mookie Cooper edition?
Well, I'd be lying to you if I said I knew who he was before he committed to Mizzou. But I always like seeing decently high-starred guys come to Mizzou. And I'm not really concerned that he didn't see any playing time at Ohio State, because Ohio State is one of those blue-chip programs that can just over-recruit and have like 5-star players on the bench. Mm-hmm. So that really doesn't faze me at all. And they've played 7 games this year. Yeah, you're not really going to see your bench players in conference games. If they were playing a non-conference schedule, we probably would have seen a little bit of Mookie Cooper, but yeah, that's not a concern to me at all.
Yeah, so Mookie Cooper, so if you guys don't, aren't familiar with him or never seen him play or anything, basically the best way I can describe him is a guy that he's kind of like, I don't mean to compare him to Tyreek Hill because no one comes close to Tyreek Hill when it comes to speed, but Cooper is that kind of Tyreek Hill type player. I'm sorry if you hear my dog barking in the background, by the way, but Mookie Cooper is kind of that Tyreek Hill type do-it-all guy. He's running back and receiver. He can take handoffs. He can catch. He can take the top off of a defense. He's definitely someone that can contribute and all that good stuff. So I expect him to be an immediate contributor, and he will be eligible immediately because of the no penalty transfer rule, and he'll have 4 years of eligibility.
Yeah, I'm down for that. I'm really excited about this wide receiver room. I was excited about it before we brought in Mookie Cooper, but it just seems really stacked to me. I might be wrong in that assumption, but I just think we have some really good players, and we've seen Bazelak play really well with some of the bottom of the roster guys. So I'm excited to see what Drink can do with some really, really good receivers.
Yeah, that's kind of one of my big takeaways is that, if this is what Mizzou was able to do this past season with, kind of I don't want to call them scrap heap because, I think they're a little bit better than that, but kind of a scrap heap group of wide receivers. So it'll be exciting to see what they can do with some elite prospects, So Brian Hartline, the former NFL receiver who is currently a wide receiver coach at Ohio State, he said he had some nice things to say about Mookie Cooper while he was on the team there over the spring. He said Mookie is a smaller guy, but really stocky. And he added that when he goes to block, he tries to knock you out. That's one of the biggest things I loved about him. He can do stuff from the speed sweeps to plays down the field, and he does a lot. He played a little running back, more than receiver at times, and there might be a transition there. So it sounds like the Tigers will be getting an up and coming stud in Cooper, who just didn't quite fit in at Ohio State, which is okay. But you mentioned that the wide receiver room might be a little stacked. And I wouldn't necessarily call it stacked in a way where it's like they have a bunch of talented guys that, are fighting for a spot, but definitely stacked to where, more stacked to where than where it was like a month or two ago, just with guys that could potentially contribute. So I can definitely agree with that. But also the big thing with the Mookie Cooper addition is also just the local momentum. I mean, he's a local kid and an elite local kid at that. And he'll just add to the trend of St. Louis prospects choosing Mizzou.
Which wasn't that Drink's like, I don't want to say catchphrase, but it's kind of like the fundamentals that he wanted to establish. Like he wanted to keep these guys home. So it's nice to see that he's really doing that more than we've seen any other Mizzou coach do in recent history.
Yeah, I mean, he just wanted to lock down the borders. He preached that since the first day he got the job. And, it's easier said than done, but for right now, he's doing it. And it remains to be seen if he can keep it up, because right now we're still kind of in that honeymoon recruiting phase where all the local high school coaches love Drinkwitz, all the players love him. But, as soon as a St. Louis guy maybe doesn't work out at Mizzou or something, you just hope it doesn't turn into, the St. Louis guys never work out at Mizzou. That's why they don't pick Mizzou anymore. So it happens, but we'll just have to see if Drinkwitz can keep it up. I think he can. I mean, I think with how many elite St. Louis guys they've already picked up, I mean, at least a couple of them have to work out. I mean, it's just going to happen. And some of them aren't going to work out. Like, it's very, very unlikely that every single one of them work out, which is fine. Some of them may transfer. That's fine. But for the most part, as long as you're getting at least a few of them to keep the momentum going, then you should be fine. So that's the only transfer that Mizzou has right now, I believe. When it comes to like transfer portal season, they call it. They did get the Oklahoma transfer offensive lineman, but that was earlier during the season. But now is when a lot of kids start to jump in the portal and a lot of action goes on there. So they picked up a wide receiver. I think they're kind of done there. But Connor, I'm going to ask you, is there any other positions you'd like to see them target in the portal?
No, but I mean, nothing really in particular, but I would like to see some offensive linemen or defensive linemen, because when we lost games, it was because we couldn't control the line of scrimmage. So I feel like should be our number one priority.
Excuse me. Yeah. Speaking of which, there's actually a guy that apparently they're looking at right now. His name is Obina Ezi. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but he was an offensive tackle from the class of 2017 and just entered the portal from Memphis. And he's someone that actually had a Mizzou offer coming out of high school and had a relationship with the old staff, which Brick Haley, our current defensive line coach, and we'll get into if he stays or not a little bit later in the podcast, but he's somebody that was here during that time, so he definitely knows this kid and the kid knows him. So I definitely expect Mizzou to jump in there. And I believe if you look at Brick Haley's recent Twitter follows or something like that, he now follows this kid, which is most of the time an indication that they're now recruiting him. So that'll be interesting to see. And then also, personally, I feel like they definitely need to target linebacker. I mean, there's not much. I mean, you got some talented freshmen coming in. You've got, the guys that were already on roster, but none of them have really shown enough to make you comfortable at the position. I really like Devin Nicholson, but like, who else do you have after that? You don't really know. You lose Nick Bolton, and the defense, it wasn't all that great even with Nick Bolton, and now you lose him at the linebacker spot. So I kind of hope they find a linebacker to take over there. Preferably a guy that, can rack up a lot of tackles and cover a little bit. That just of course, everyone wants one of those linebackers, right? But I just think this team in particular needs one really badly.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen what life after Nick Bolton is with the Arkansas game after that BS ejection,
Yeah.
and it's not really anything to look forward to. So if we could get like a grad transfer or something, that'd be really helpful. But that's probably just something we're gonna have to bite the bullet on. We're not gonna get a Nick Bolton caliber player, anybody who really begins to shore up that hole.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, that's really all there is in recruiting talk right now. I mean, there's definitely other guys in the transfer portal. I'm sure they're talking to. I'm sure they're still talking to some other high school kids. We just don't know right now. A commitment could come at any time. We just don't know. We don't. But Mizzou is definitely working hard in that department. So, moving on. As everyone knows, and as everyone has heard, Mizzou doesn't have a defensive coordinator right now. Ryan Walters ended up leaving for Illinois, of all places. Brett Bielema, the new head coach at Illinois, after Lovie Smith was let go, decided to pluck Ryan Walters from the Mizzou staff. I say pluck. We'll get into the technicalities of that, but Connor, I'm just going to ask you, what was your initial impression of Ryan Walters leaving to go to Illinois?
Initially, I was pissed because uh, I know we had defended Ryan Walters on here before,
Mm-hmm.
and then for him to just up and leave for Illinois, we've talked on the show about like coaches making lateral moves before. This isn't a lateral move. This is a step down. So I don't know why anyone would voluntarily want to go from Mizzou to Illinois unless, there was some writing on the wall that his days might be numbered or something. And the more I think about it, the happier I am with it, depending on who we can bring in, because now there's an opportunity to completely clear house. We got a completely new offensive staff last year, but we, in a sense, still kind of had that Barry Odom defense,
Yeah.
and now it's gone. Drink's going to be able to bring in a completely new guy, and it's exciting. I was excited. I was depressed through most of the process, but I was also partially excited during the coaching search last year. So it's kind of like a mini coaching search, but I trust Drink a lot more to make the right decision than I do Jim Sturck.
Yeah, definitely. So the initial impression that I get is that Drinkwitz either told Ryan Walters like, "Hey, if you want to pursue another job, like just do it." Like, he was. Dave Matter tweeted that Mizzou wasn't really worried about Ryan Walters leaving, not in the sense that they didn't think he was going to leave, but that they didn't mind him moving on. So I think that's pretty telling. Now, I question how it really went down, because if you're Drinkwitz and you tell Ryan Walters, hey, go look around, and then he looks around and there's no openings for him, well, then that's kind of awkward. So I definitely think Ryan Walters also, this was a little bit of him seeing the writing on the wall. Because, like we talked about, Nick Bolton isn't going to be here anymore. He was your best defensive player. Now he's gone, and we saw the defense even with Nick Bolton. Like, it's not like he had much to look forward to next year. So he was probably like, well, I got to get out of here because this is too much for me. My seat's already getting hot, So he probably just looked around, and Illinois was the best thing that was out there for him, which, like I said, I defended Walters. I thought he got an unfair shake when you look at the talent that Mizzou had to work with this year, given the opt-outs and the injuries and all that stuff. Excuse me. But then you look at last year and Barry Odom's last year. I mean, the defense was the only thing keeping them in games. I thought the defense was pretty impressive, despite a couple of games. A lot of people like to be like, I can't believe you're defending Walters. Even last year, look at the Wyoming game. Look at the Kentucky game where we gave up. Okay, those were anomalies, though. Like, you're just picking out the worst two games and being like, look here, Walters sucks. Like, I think that's just kind of unfair to me. Like, Wyoming was the first game of the year. I think the team kind of lost their sense of urgency during that game. I don't think that was as much on Walters. I mean, we saw last year when the defense had talent that, they were pretty good. So, yeah, I defended Walters, and I thought the recruiting was pretty well defensively. Yeah, and I've seen some people debate that maybe that's more so Drink than it is Walters, but either way, you're still recruiting well, even with Walters, even if there's a Drink effect there. But, I'm not upset because again, I defended Walters, yeah, but if you had the opportunity to get someone better now, well then I'm all for it. Because like I wasn't saying Walters was the best option. I would never have admitted that Walters leaving was something that I'm totally against, just because like, you know, if there's definitely someone out there better that you know of that you can get, well sure, go ahead. But now they don't need an excuse to go look for someone better because Walters left, so they have an opening now. So I'm totally fine with them going and looking for someone. So now we're going to get into some candidates for the job. And like you said, it's a mini coaching search, so fun times. But I'm going to go ahead and ask you first, who are some guys that you're looking at or that you're interested in or that you just feel would be a good fit here?
Well, the number one guy on my board at least is Will Muschamp. I feel like my thoughts on Will Muschamp are similar to uh, the way you looked at Lane Kiffin last year. You know, like he's this big name that would be a great hire, but you don't know how realistic it is, especially with other SEC openings out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like Will Muschamp, but I'm not holding my breath on it and expecting him to come here. Um, One of the names I've seen thrown around that I'd like was Kevin Steele. Uh, I don't. I have mixed feelings about it, but the fact that he was almost given the Auburn coach or the Auburn head coaching position is kind of intriguing to me. So that means that they trusted him. So he must be pretty good at his job. But really, the type of coach that I'd like to see as a defensive coordinator is I want to see like someone with head coaching experience because last year there were points where I felt like Drink was getting kind of overwhelmed. And if you're a defensive coordinator with head coaching experience, you can help out recruiting and just kind of take a little bit of the load off of Drink.
Yeah, and like you said, there's some kind of there's always something intriguing about failed head coaches going back to coordinator jobs, and a lot of times, you know, that makes them successful. One example, I know this is in the NFL, but you know, a team we cheer for, Steve Spagnuolo, you know, he was defensive coordinator, decided to take a head coaching gig, failed miserably as a head coach, came back with the Chiefs as a defensive coordinator once again, and the Chiefs defense has made massive strides in the right direction. I've always been a fan of those types of moves. And here's an interesting name that I'm going to go ahead and throw out there. A lot of people might just turn off the podcast after this, be like, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. Lovie Smith, the reverse Illinois. I feel like Lovie Smith would actually be an interesting candidate as someone who could come in and be defensive coordinator. I get it. He wasn't a good head coach. Doesn't necessarily mean he's just a horrible coach. He has NFL experience that appeals to recruits. He was a defensive coordinator at a couple stops. I believe he coached defensive backs and linebackers at a few schools, including Ohio State. That's definitely someone that I would look at, honestly. What do you think of that suggestion?
I did not think that Lovie Smith was good at all as the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's what I think of when I hear Lovie Smith. I think of him being the bad head coach for the Bucs. But
Yeah.
I would actually be all for to get him as our defensive coordinator because he's been coaching forever. He has a ton of experience, and uh, he was the coach of the Bears when they went to the Super Bowl and lost to Peyton Manning, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So that looks good to recruits. And I don't think he's going to be a bad defensive coordinator. I think he's just a bad head coach. You know, even when he was the head coach of Illinois, you still had a bunch of Illinois fans defending him.
Yeah.
So I feel like he'd be a good hire at defensive coordinator.
Yeah, he's almost kind of like a Barry Odom type coach when you think about it. Like Barry Odom, kind of a good defensive coordinator when he was here at Mizzou, and then he became head coach. Didn't really work out as a head coach. Now he has a coordinator job at Arkansas, and you know, Arkansas defense, you know, again made improvements. I'm still glad we hung up 50 on him, but he's kind of similar in that sense. But Lovie Smith has the NFL experience too, which you know means a lot. But another candidate that I've heard a lot, I would really like this one, Chad Staggs from Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina was great this year. They were a ranked team. Chad Staggs, if you read his kind of little mini bio on Google, came to Coastal Carolina after 2 years as Furman's defensive coordinator and safeties coach from 2017 to 2018. In 2018, Staggs helped the Paladins earn a share of the 2018 Southern Conference Championship, the program's league best 14th title, going 6-2 in league play and winning 6 of their final 7 games. And then if you look at Coastal Carolina's defense this year, they were, if I can get it here, 31 in total defense in the entire nation. Now you have to consider the level of competition, but they still played some good teams this year, including their bowl game, and did pretty well. They only allowed 351 yards of total offense per game and held their opponents to about 5.4 yards per play. And I don't know. Plus, he has a cool name. Chad Staggs seems like a pretty killer name. So I don't know. I'd be a fan of that hire. How about you?
This seemed, if I was going to bet on who it would be, this is who it would be. This just seems like almost a defensive drink. Like, that's just kind of the vibe I get from Chad Staggs. And that's honestly who I would bet to get this, because it's just kind of really, really good this year. So obviously they're doing something right. So I'd be completely down to bring him in.
Yeah, I believe he's only in his early 30s or something like that. Younger coach, like you said, the defensive drink, something maybe that Mizzou will look for. So that's definitely an interesting name. And then another one is David Reeves, the current UAB defensive coordinator, a 2-time Broyles Award nominee. Reeves' unit has been one of the most disruptive defenses in the nation over the past 2 years. In 2018, the Blazers finished 9th nationally in total defense. And in 2019, and over the past 2 seasons, UAB has been among the nation's best at getting to the quarterback, which is definitely something that this team will need. Compiling 92 total sacks and 217 tackles for a loss. Additionally, UAB has been able to get off the field when it counted. Finished number 2 nationally ranked in third down defense. I don't know about you, but that sounds really good to me. And if you go ahead and look on the NCAA total defense rankings for this past season, UAB was number 7th. They only allowed 311 total yards of offense per game, only gave up 23 opposing TDs. Again, this is another hire that I'd be a huge fan of. How about you?
The way I look at it is there's a certain few group of 5 schools that are just doing the right thing. And that's why I was one of the first ones to mention Drink. I didn't mention him by name, but I said the Appalachian State head coach.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel with UAB and Coastal. Coastal was a great team this year. They shocked everyone. And UAB didn't have a football team a few years ago, and now they're one of the most dominant group of 5 teams. So the way I look at it is, if you can get a coach from one of these group of 5 teams that are just dominating and that are doing all the right things, you made the right hire.
Yeah, absolutely. So the kind of those mid-tier school guys that are kind of on the rise, they're generally pretty young. Those are the kind of guys that I like, and that definitely fits David Reeves and Chad Staggs. And David Reeves, too, also from UAB. I think it's worth noting that Casey Woods, our current tight ends coach and recruiting coordinator, was also plucked from the UAB staff when Drink was hired. So that might be a sign that Drink dips back into UAB to make this defensive coordinator hire. And then another one that I've heard a lot is just promoting David Gibbs, our current defensive backs coach, who was an interim for a game when Ryan Walters was out. I believe that was the South Carolina game, which if I do remember correctly, and it was the South Carolina game, I mean, the defense did play really good that game. So I don't know. I think that would be the most boring pick. I think, that wouldn't provide much change. But how would you feel about promoting David Gibbs to defensive coordinator?
Not a fan of it. We've seen Mizzou promote in-house guys before it doesn't work out. I want to do something exciting like the Drinkwitz hire, and I just want to, just get hyped about our new defensive coordinator.
Hmm.
I don't want just the same old dude.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So there's really no timeline for when they might hire a defensive coordinator. It could be in 2 weeks. It could be in 2 days. We don't know. But I think we threw out a pretty good group of names. Someone that I kind of was interested in was Derek Mason. Obviously, he went to Auburn, probably a better gig than Mizzou. So congrats to him, I guess. I would have been interested in that, but it's fine if we don't get him, But besides that, I don't really have anyone else in mind that pops out, but I wouldn't be surprised if whoever Mizzou's next defensive coordinator was from our short list right there. But also it could be someone that, we completely have never heard of before, which is fine too. I trust Drink to make the right hire. And I think it's going to be an exciting next few weeks or a few days to few weeks.
Yeah, the only way that I think I would be like genuinely upset is if uh he pulled somebody from the West Coast or something.
Yeah.
Like I don't want like a Pac-12 coordinator or a Mountain West coordinator or anything like that. I want because college football is definitely regional. So I'm not trying to get someone who's been coaching in the Mountain West to come try and stop SEC offenses.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could agree there. Sometimes guys like that, they have recruiting ties on, out on the coast, or they sometimes can bring guys with them, or, maybe with a step up in conference, they can also elevate their coaching. I don't know. It depends. Like I agree with you. I'd rather get someone, kind of how we've been talking about, not someone from a conference that's known for crappy defense, but yeah, I think it'll be exciting to see. But did you have anything else you wanted to talk about for this podcast?
No, I just hope that we can keep all our recruits,
Yeah.
That's my biggest concern, because I know Walters already tried to get Rakestraw to transfer, and that's mildly concerning to me, although it is expected. But the fact that Rakestraw was open about saying that he's a snake trying to get him to transfer, nothing's really going to happen.
So I was on Power Mizzou. I don't want to share a ton from Power Mizzou just because it is a subscription site and, that's like premium content and stuff. But so they were trying to decipher the Rakestraw tweet on there. And from my understanding, Rakestraw wasn't trying to say that Walters was recruiting him to Illinois, but what he was trying to say is that it was crazy that Walters recruited him so hard just a year ago only to leave for Illinois. So I think there's kind of a discrepancy in how people are deciphering Rakestraw's tweet. I don't know. It could be true that he's recruiting him to Illinois, but I don't know why you would do that. I don't know why someone who's starting on an SEC team at cornerback would go to Illinois, but whatever. And I will say, just based off what I've read on Power Mizzou, that most of the defensive recruits are either not surprised by the Walters move, or they just don't really care, which I think is a good sign. And I think it shows that Drink was probably transparent with them that, hey, Walters probably might not be here. And Walters wasn't very involved in a lot of these kids' recruitment, probably just because, there was a general consensus that Walters wasn't sticking around, which if that's the case, well, then that's how you run a program.
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody be like, wow, I can't believe we're losing Ryan Walters. That's such a blow to the program.
Right. And it's crazy because it seems like just a year ago, people were worried that Walters was going to leave for a head coaching job at a smaller school. And now no one really has a problem with him leaving, but whatever. That's that. Nothing else to really talk about. If some big news happens, like the defensive coordinator being hired or some other big recruits, you'll be sure to check our podcast page again, because we'll definitely have something on that. Make sure to check out www.showmefootball.com for more Mizzou content. That's all we got for today, guys. Peace.